We all know this sound. So why is it if we just add some notes around it, that same sound can be a part of something so beautiful? My name is Braden Holmes. And today, I want to talk about dissonance. So keep watching, because this idea might change the way you think about dissonance forever. To make this argument properly, we first have to define dissonance. Dissonance is a feeling, not a sound. Feel that? It's visceral. You can feel the restlessness inside of you. But if we hide it, that feeling goes away even though the sound is still there. While it's useful in harmony to classify this as a dissonant chord, that's not what I'm referring to in this video. I'm talking about that cringing feeling you get when you hear a chord like this one. I should also mention that this video is mostly about chords in isolation, as our feelings can change when we use chords in sequence. With that said, where does this feeling come from? This is 20th Century Harmony by Vincent Persichetti. If we open it up, this is the first diagram we see. It splits the 12 intervals into groups based on their qualities. We have open consonances, containing the perfect fifth, and the octave. Soft consonances, with our major third, minor third, major sixth, and minor sixth. Mild dissonances, major second, and minor seventh. And sharp dissonances, minor second, and major seventh. Only the perfect fourth and tritone remain uncategorized. This is a handy little chart, and it's nice that we can combine some of these consonant intervals together to get a consonant sound. But what if we use a major seventh, a sharp dissonance? Surely its harsh sound will taint the consonants of whatever we put it with. So let's choose the most consonant thing we can think of. This is a C major chord, made up of a major third and a perfect fifth. What happens if we add that sharp dissonance? Oh, well, that wasn't so bad. In fact, it's one of the biggest building blocks of jazz, the major 7 chord. Where did the dissonance go? The sound is still here, but there's no sharpness left. In fact, it feels extremely smooth. So this diagram cannot be the full story, as it seems that dissonant intervals do not necessarily lead to dissonant chords. Maybe the key to understanding why an interval might stop feeling dissonant is noticing why the consonant ones don't. The octave is just 2 instances of the same note, so there's not much to analyze about how they interact. But the fifth is the strongest interval we have. Our brains are really good at understanding how the top note reinforces the bottom one, and that creates a really solid foundation. The major third is weaker, but it's still pretty clear to us where the foundation is. The same is true for the minor third. We can easily hear that C is our home base. The major sixth is again weaker, but if we just take the bottom note and move it up an octave, we end up with a minor third. And if we do the same to a minor sixth, we end up with a major third. So they're just inversions. What do these have in common? Well, our brains don't have to do a lot of guessing. We can clearly work out a tonic because it's always one of the 2 notes in the interval. Is this true of dissonant intervals? Let's try to find the tonic of this major second. C and D. Is it C? It really doesn't sound like it is. Maybe we should invert this like our sixths. No, because that's just a minor seventh, the other soft dissonance. The minor second has the same problem. If we invert this, well, we just get the major seventh, which is the other sharp dissonance. Starting to see the difference? All of the consonant intervals contain their own tonic. They're independently at rest. But the dissonant ones don't have that, as neither note works well as the fundamental. They're homeless. Maybe this is the problem. What if we tried to give a dissonant interval a home? Would that ease the feeling? Let's go back to the sound I started the video with. Where could this minor second live? Well, the most obvious answer is in D flat, making this C the major 7 of a D flat major 7 chord. We can throw another D flat on top to preserve this interval. This already smooths things out quite a lot. By giving the brain context in which to interpret the minor second interval, things feel much less grating. Remember adding that major seventh to the C major chord? The reason it didn't create a harsh sound is because the C major chord created a really strong tonal space for the seventh to live in. It gave it a home. We can, of course, safely add more color to this D flat major 7 chord. If we just throw an E flat on top, we get a D flat major 9, and then I like to throw A flats on either side to make this a D flat major 9 over A flat chord, which is the sound you heard in the beginning of the video. Let's look at another one. Take this major second. Where could this live? Well, it could be D flat 6, B flat 7, B flat minor 7, A flat major 9, A flat minor 9. There's an endless amount of possibilities as long as it fits nicely in its home. So dissonance seems to be a feeling you get when your brain is confused, when it just doesn't know where to place a sound. Not all chords are created equal. Some create very clear tonal spaces and others don't, and it's those that don't which cause those feelings of dissonance. I'm not going to get into why some spaces are clearer than others, because that's a topic big enough for its own video. So what's up with this chord? Sure, there's a minor second here, but we now know that's not sufficient evidence for why this chord feels so restless. Instead, maybe it's because we have this mixture of a C major sound and C minor sound. Our brain wants to interpret it as one or the other, but we actually have both. It's that confusion which generates that nails on a chalkboard-like feeling. It seems reasonable now to assume that the most uncomfortable space we could make is the one whose space is most unclear. So let's try to just play as many notes as possible. Like sure, it's a lot of noise, but it doesn't feel as bad to me as this one. It's as if the space is so unclear that the brain stops attempting to categorize and just accepts the chaos. If we graph how our feelings change as tonal ambiguity increases, we begin at an ambivalent vibe when there is nothing very interesting in the space. We then see this nice incline for a while because our brains actually like the challenge of interpreting tonality. But at some point, the tonal space reaches a certain threshold of ambiguity where the brain is unable to solve a problem it thinks it should be able to solve, and we fall into a pit of uncomfortably bad vibes. If we go further, the space degrades into a restful noise and we begin to interpret it as such, returning us back to an ambivalent vibe. I call this dip the dissonance valley, and it is similar to the uncanny valley, which you may be familiar with, in a lot of ways. To me, this diagram is a lot more useful than the basic categorization of intervals from the beginning, because it actually gives us a recipe for dissonance. It's a balance of uncertainty, and not just a product of dissonant intervals. It's the context as a whole that matters. So C major 7 flat 9 chord isn't dissonant because of this minor ninth. We can easily add different notes to make this minor ninth sound fine. Right? Instead, it's because this D flat doesn't belong with the C tonality. There's too much ambiguity, and we can't interpret it properly, and it drops us in a dissonance valley. Let's plot some more sounds on this chart to get a feel for it. On the far left, we should place the octave, because it's only one pitch and therefore has zero ambiguity. Next to that should be the fifth, because while there is another note, it's still nice and clear, and there's not a lot of room for error. A major triad might live around here, with more ambiguity at the reward of better vibes. As we add more notes, our chances of being misinterpreted increases, so we need to be careful about which ones we choose to maximize vibes without falling off the cliff. We'll put a major 9 chord around here. The 7th and the 9th are good choices because while they move us closer to the edge, our brains are still able to do the work no problem and vibes improve. At the peak of the hill, we might find something like our old friend the D flat major 9 over A flat chord, because now even its bass note has been obscured, but it is still reasonable enough that we can work it out and it sounds pretty satisfying. At the bottom of the valley, we of course find our examples that tipped over the edge like the C major 7 flat 9 and that mixed tonality C chord from earlier. On the upslope, with even less tonal form would be the minor second interval. And then all the way at the end of the spectrum is whatever flavor of chromatic soup you'd like. Maybe this one, or this one, or even this one. Hopefully you can see why this is useful to think about. The only thing that matters when you're choosing notes are the notes themselves. You should feel free to pick whichever ones you want without worrying if one's a minor ninth away from another. The important thing is understanding this balance of ambiguity. Music is extremely fragile. It takes just one note to send everything into Dissonance Valley. So be picky, be restrained. And I know that's hard because there's so many great notes, and sometimes you just feel like you love all of them. But what you do has to be clear enough that you don't just give everyone bad vibes. And that's the idea. I hope you got something out of this, and if you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. I have a lot more ideas coming, and if you like this one, you won't want to miss those. If you have any questions or differing thoughts, please leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and I'll see you next time.